So I'm really, really, really honored to be here. Um, I want to dedicate this talk to all of the recent graduates and all of the current ND students. I am just ahead of you guys in this journey, and I have so much hope to share. I've been practicing in a really isolated capacity for all of my career, and I wondered, what message can I offer the greater profession to set the tone for this wonderful conference? This talk is not about burnout. It's not about fear. It's not about politics, student debt, or education, licensure, scope expansion, or accreditation. This talk is about hope, grounded in experience. I want to acknowledge that our profession is navigating a time of uncertainty, especially with changes in Department of Ed, student loan access, and even our school's curriculum. But uncertainty is not the opposite of possibility. It's often where possibility can begin. I think what we've been able to accomplish as a profession since the early 1900s is testament to our resilience and commitment to what we know is true. This medicine works, and this medicine is for all of humanity. When has there not been a time when the future of naturopathy was uncertain? And over the last 7 years, I've become convinced of one thing. The most successful naturopathic physicians who have passed this torch forward do not build a life around their career. They build a life around our timeless principles to shape both their practice and their personal lives. It took me a trip across the world, a garage startup in Las Vegas, a global pandemic, and some extraordinary mentors to begin to understand how vital it is to live sustainably in our medicine. But to explain why possibility has become such an important word to me, I'd like to take you back briefly to my beginning. Growing up in Las Vegas, I was exposed to a lot of different people and different ideas. And when I was about 3 years old, people started asking me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I always gave them the same answer, a dancing doctor. I loved dancing and I loved helping people, and I couldn't imagine a more prestigious way to help than to become a physician. This was the North Star of my life for the first 30 years that I was on this planet. And although I was often told my dream was not possible, I kept proving people wrong over and over again. Having hope is more important than having a how. And usually our deepest callings can show up long before we can understand them. Now, I wish I could tell you that I was raised in a holistic household and that my calling to naturopathy was obvious and simple. Instead, I grew up in a conventional medicine household, and unfortunately, I was a child who suffered from chronic and repeat strep throat infections. My parents were doing the best that they knew how to do, but many of my youngest memories are of me waiting in my pediatrician's office, having a throat culture, receiving a penicillin shot, or going home with antibiotics over and over and over and over again. Finally, my pediatrician told my mother, if she gets strep one more time, I'm taking her tonsils out. At the tender age of 5, I did not like that sounded. And so I willed myself to never get strep again. And I didn't. This was my first encounter with the Vis medicatrix maturing. I couldn't articulate it then, but it left a deep impression on me that you were more than a diagnosis and a pill, that you could change the outcome of your care with participation, and maybe there was a self-healing mechanism inside of all of us. So long before I could identify or even steward this medicine, I first experienced the possibility of it and a longing for it that became the foundation of everything that followed. So fast forward to the end of my college career, and I had managed to keep my North Star aligned to becoming a dancing doctor. I was the first double major at Scripps Women's College to graduate with a dual major in molecular biology and dance choreography. I was pre-med, I had sat the MCAT, I had applied to medical schools, and I was spending a lot of time at UCLA shadowing their top physicians and attending grand rounds. And one day, I attended a grand rounds that changed my life. not because of the presentation, but because of the question that I felt compelled to ask. So I'm in this huge auditorium with hundreds of medical students, residents, clinicians, doctors, the presenter. And at the end of his presentation, he asked, "Does anyone have any questions?" And I had this out-of-body experience where at the back of the room, my arm shot up. And I'm looking at my arm going, I don't have a question. And I didn't have one in my mind, but I had one in my heart. And before I could think, I blurted out in this auditorium, "Why does nobody get better?" Have you ever had one question redirect your entire life? Don't get me wrong, I had seen heroic measures, I had seen incredible surgeries, complex cases, pharmacology, all at UCLA. But I hadn't seen anyone heal. And with my question, I realized in that moment, my definition of medicine was not in alignment with what I had witnessed at a world-class training facility. A resident turned to me and whispered in my ear, "I don't think you're cut out for this." And honestly, I felt a wave of relief. I think the V's was calling me home again in that moment. And I knew I wanted to help people heal, but I still didn't know that naturopathy existed. So I did the best that I knew how to do, and I moved laterally from medicine into research, thinking maybe there was a way for me to fulfill my life's calling there. So I took a position working in cancer research at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle. I was helping to develop diagnostic and prognostic blood tests for ovarian cancer and prostate cancer, and it was very rewarding work. But I quickly realized I was missing people. I wanted to work with people, not their cancer cells. And it was during this time in my life that I started having some mild to moderate health concerns, and someone in my lab recommended the Bastyr Clinic. I was beyond impressed that this teaching clinic had an affiliated university, legitimizing the practice of natural medicine. And it made me very open to my initial experience. So I went to my first naturopathy appointment, and suddenly I experienced a new understanding of what medicine could be. This practitioner spent time with me, like a lot of time with me, and asked questions no one had ever asked me before. I felt seen, and I quickly got better with a handful of lifestyle recommendations. It was the first time I saw an avenue for my belief that people could be healed. And I was so grateful that before I ever became a naturopath, someone else faithfully stewarded this medicine for me to experience as a patient. I wish I could tell you I ran straight out of that appointment, banging on Bastyr University's door, demanding an application, but life had one more calling that I had to complete to test my readiness to address this one. Purpose isn't always linear, and I had still not pursued my dream of being a full-time professional dancer. So between asking that fateful question at UCLA and arriving at Bastyr, I lived, I danced, I moved across the United States a couple of times, and I continued healing, which were foundational steps to ensure that I was ready for this calling. I left Seattle with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to join part of the Martha Graham Dance Company's tour across the US, and I moved to Los Angeles. In LA, I found an incredible dance community. I was in commercials, music videos, I was a lead dancer at Universal Studios, and I also met and fell in love with my future husband. Becoming a professional dancer connected me even deeper to my body and my health journey. Suddenly, my body was my instrument, and it was my job, literally, to take care of it. And I did not take that responsibility lightly. I continued to work with naturopathic doctors across the US, and I learned to trust my body and listen to it without fear. My dance career eventually took me to New York City, where I was tasked with building a community theater in Brooklyn. It was an incredible startup, connecting the local community to local artists, touring artists, and giving underserved schools access to a theater for classes and programs. But it was a startup and a large risk to take in Brooklyn. My boss and dear friend turned to me 6 months into the project and said, "Don't think, just answer. If the startup fails, what would you go do?" And I had another moment in my life where the V's spoke before I could think, and I blurted out, "I'll probably go to Bastyr and become an MD." And as soon as I spoke those words aloud, I knew I could never take them back. The startup was going to fail, and I would be moving back to Seattle. So finally arriving at the Bastyr campus for my interview felt like coming home. And I'm sure many of you can resonate with that feeling at your respected schools. My search for an avenue to become a healer that honored both my background in the hard sciences and my artistry as a dancer was done. I remember walking onto campus for the first time. The excitement, the buzz, the students, this herb garden, people forest bathing, a cafeteria with organic food. I was like, this is it. And I was paired with a student mentor who took me around to classes, physiology, then homeopathy, then physical exams. This was a dream come true. I realized I hadn't discovered something small. I discovered an entire profession, and this was everything that I was looking for. This is the moment I realized I was inheriting a treasure, access to our principles, modalities, philosophy, all codified by generations before me. And I had the distinct privilege of becoming a part of it. What I didn't know then was my greatest education wasn't going to come from the classroom. It was going to come from the people that the classroom gave me access to. This is where I stopped telling my story and I began telling our story. I didn't fall in love with a collection of therapies or treatment plans. I fell in love with a philosophy for healing. In between the heavy sciences of anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and gross lab, my first year class all delighted in the time that we got to spend learning about the roots and what made us different as physicians. We were divided up into 4 sections, and each of us was assigned a different local elder who walked us through our naturopathic inheritance with weekly readings and discussions. We read Nature Cure, we memorized the 6 principles, we discussed the therapeutic order, and all of this had been codified by legends before us. What a gift that this profession had its own North Star, a coherent worldview, and everything finally fit together for healing-centered medicine. We all realized the philosophy was the treasure of this profession, and that we were to become stewards of that treasure. So imagine my heartbreak when I started hearing over and over and over and over again from students, clinicians, teachers, enjoy the philosophy now, you won't get it in the clinic. I was confused. I was heartbroken. But instead of accepting it, I did something about it. The point wasn't that the school or the clinic was failing us. The point is that every generation inherits opportunities to strengthen the profession. And what if this challenge could show me what was possible when we worked collaboratively together, even with differing opinions and goals? So this was the first time I chose to actively care for the profession instead of simply benefiting from it. The moment I realized that stewardship requires participation. So I did something bold. I ran for NMSA president. And my platform was, I'll give you more access to the philosophy. And I won. It gave me a position to approach the administration as a student representative to collaborate with them. I had this idea. What if we made a beautiful poster of our most cherished philosophy, the therapeutic order? And what if we got it into every patient room so that it can initiate discussions about our philosophy and our rich roots? So I decided to make a partnership. I was going to go to Bastyr Marketing, where I'd done some work study. I approached them and I said, would you please help me generate this image? I want it generated by Bastyr. It's going in our clinic. They said, that's a great idea, but you need to talk to the authors. So I contacted Dr. Pamela Snyder with my idea, and I said, will you please sign off on this? The students want more access to the philosophy in the clinic. Of course, Dr. Pamela Snyder loved that. She signed off on everything. We brought a mock of the poster to Dr. Jamie Wallace, who was the chief medical officer at Bastyr at the time. And he said, look, if this is what the students want, put it on every wall. This is fantastic. And lastly, I approached my husband's print shop and I said, would you mind donating these professional vinyl posters for every room at the Bastyr Clinic? I don't want 1 cent coming out of our tuition for this. And they did. It was all a gift. Everyone was all in, and I was thrilled and inspired by the experience of collaboration for a greater good. I also want to point out this wasn't a criticism about our teachers. This was an opportunity to give them access to better tools. So my NMSA team worked up all weekend. We wanted to unveil these during Naturopathic Medicine Week. So we went into the clinic, they let us in, we hung them up in the night all over the clinic, in every review preview room and in every patient room, and that's me and my team hanging them up. The Monday that everyone returned to clinic, we received rave reviews from students, clinicians, but almost more importantly, the patients. And students were running out and finding me in the halls. I talked about the therapeutic order today with my patient. They saw which intervention we were going on. It was lighting Bastyr Clinic on fire. And word quickly spread to BUC, the California campus. And they said, hey, where's our posters? So we sent 100 more down to California. NMSA International was given the right to sell the posters for student fundraising, and the Naturopathic Medicine Academy started selling it to practitioners on their website. Emboldened by the impact and feeling called to dig deeper, and I mean a lot deeper, I decided I wanted to see the philosophy in unbridled action. I wanted to learn it from the people who had been carrying it and protecting it for decades. So after my leadership experience with NMSA, I started to consider returning home to Las Vegas, Nevada to practice. And I was being urged by people whom I deeply respected, people that I'd been spending a lot of time with, mostly Dr. Molly Niedermeyer and Dr. Eric Yarnell. They saw my tenacity and they knew that I would have opportunity if I brought this medicine back home. I was actually pretty fearful, though, of going to a pre-licensed state straight from my training in Washington. I started asking myself, can I trust our foundational medicine enough to build my life and career around it? Can I trust the modalities I was legally allowed to do in Nevada? Were hydrotherapy, botanical medicine, and homeopathy enough to heal people in the desert and start a business? The elders are where I found my conviction. Dr. Molly Niedermeyer was the first naturopath I shadowed outside of the teaching clinic. And if you don't know Molly, I feel like you could place 6 degrees of separation in this room and she would be at the center of the web. She was trained by John Bastyr. She has 42 years of clinical experience. She was a dean of naturopathic medicine, and she has trained more residents than I'm currently aware of. She also was my first year philosophy teacher. So at the end of our first year together, she challenged my entire class, come shadow me, come watch me work, come see the foundational medicine. And so I did. I showed up on her doorstep my second year, and I received over 600 hours of clinical training from her. Molly showed me incredible confidence in our medicine, and she believed in me long before I could believe in myself. Still, after all this time with her, I felt very unprepared going home. And so before I did, I asked her, what do I do if somebody comes in and I don't even know where to start? What if I don't even understand their diagnosis? She just looks confused at me, as if I've wasted all of her time. And she said, if somebody's coming to you for help, there is no way they are acing their foundations of health. Start there with everyone. Diet, sleep, movement, hydration. Are they doing things that bring them joy? If they're seeking you out, there's no way that they're acing all 5 of those. And that tip made this whole journey feel very accessible to a young grad. Now, gaining access to Dr. Jared Zeff was a bit more of a reach. I was in Seattle and he was in Vancouver. I was Bastyr, he was NUNM. But I found him at an AANP conference between my junior and senior year and begged the Priority 1 rep, George Bynum, remember Turquoise George? I said, could you please introduce me to Dr. Jared Zeff? Thanks to George, Jared agreed to let me to come shadow him for 2 days, 6 months later. Those 2 days have turned into 600 hours at Salmon Creek Clinic, and I'm still shadowing him to this day. I'll be in his office again in 3 weeks. Jared showed me that vitalism could be practiced no matter where you lived in the world. It did not rely on licensure or scope. The roots of naturopathy don't depend on scope because they survived both the disappearance of our profession during the mid-20th century and its resurgence in the 70s. And the results in his clinic spoke for themselves. Every client got a diet, did hydrotherapy, a custom remedy, and botanicals. And everybody came back better, like freakishly better. So I kept coming back to learn from him. And when eventually I had learned all I could about his modalities and the philosophy behind them, I started shadowing to sync my nervous system up to his. Have you ever witnessed an elder become the medicine? The patient encounter, the cadence, the questions, the order of them, the care, but like really the belief that the V's and the person in front of them can heal. I'm convinced at this point, sometimes his interventions don't even matter. It's the presence he's giving his clients that matters the most. So I learned that with decades of practice, we can all eventually become the medicine. But in the immediate future of my own career, all I had to do was start with the foundations of health. Standing on the shoulders of giants, I reached out to the next generation of NDs to see if I could be brave enough to practice this medicine in my own way. The next question I found myself asking was, can I build a career by leaning into what makes naturopathic medicine different? I did not want to imitate conventional medicine, and I didn't want to compete with it. I wanted to safely lean into what makes us different. That's why people are coming to us, and that's all I can offer in a pre-licensed state. Honestly, I think I got the value of my entire Bastyr education sitting in Dr. Eric Yarnell's weekly office hours for 2 years straight. I had to work up the courage to show up, but his desire to teach outshines his intimidating brilliance. He fueled my love of botanical medicine and encouraged me to return to Nevada and use the powerful medicinal plants of the Mojave Desert. He taught me to lean into what sets us apart. Patients don't come to us for the standard of care. They come to us looking for the medicine of the earth. And with that, we spent hours formulating together, and he taught me how to prescribe low-dose herbs safely and effectively. He showed me that botanical medicine would become the highest horse intervention in my clinic, and it would be the crown jewel of my practice for acute and chronic cases alike. Eric also instilled deep respect for ecology, the use of whole plants, wildcrafting responsibly, and always leaving the land stronger than how you found it. He also challenged me that naturopathic medicine did not require a spiritual explanatory level. The V's can be a result of natural selection and even evolution. He's been my emergency phone call for the past 7 years, and he continues to make time for me. Thank you. I got access to Dr. Paul Anderson at the same AANP conference that I found Dr. Zeff at. He was speaking for NMSA, and I was really excited to connect with him, mostly to criticize him that he needed better marketing for his NPLEX review course. I had wasted money on a subpar product. Being the NMSA president for Bastyr, Washington at the time, I took a chance on his reputation as an educator, and I asked, could I please reconnect you to the students through a satellite lecture series off campus? We ended up calling it the Attic Club because we met in the attic of a house. So it was senior students only, and I'd get them together and say, okay, guys, what's stumping us? What do we need Paul to explain to us? We would come up with a topic, ask him to write the talk, and he would meet us in Betty Lynn Brown's attic. Betty Lynn Brown is the original secretary of Dr. Bill Mitchell. She's still alive. She's still doing yoga. She's a hoot. But she gave us access to, the upstairs floor of her home. And I love the dedication that we all showed for it. I distinctly remember it snowing one day in Seattle. The clinic was closed, the campus was closed, and all the students still drove out to meet for the Attic Club with Paul. This developed into a friendship where we eventually ended up giving an NMSA lecture together on integrated oncology 3 years ago. Paul, who you all very well know, he's known for his up-to-date pharmacology lectures and seminars on rare and difficult cases, but he taught me how our philosophy can evolve without abandoning its roots, how to communicate our medicine effectively and bring it into modern practice while staying grounded in naturopathic philosophy. Both of these humans are shining examples of docering. They are world-renowned educators, and they share their passion for our medicine through their teaching. But before heading home, I wanted to get outside my own orbit and learn from physicians I never would have crossed paths with. I wanted to watch a variety of experts in a variety of modalities, and I found that by traveling all over the US my senior year. So I took a huge tour of the US, hitting Hamden, Connecticut, Scottsdale, Arizona, and Spokane, Washington. I wanted to broaden my exposure to ways of practice, since very rarely do NDs practice alike. And I got my wish. Each of these physicians practice differently, different strengths, different personalities, different patient populations, but I noticed something remarkable with all of them. Over time, the medicine had shaped each one of them, and I saw them practicing sustainably and even with much ease and joy. Dr. Jim Sensenig was taking on impossible cases from Yale that had been worked up by every specialist in the room. He'd sit there, go over the results and say, well, the most obvious answer is probably the answer. He kept it simple, and he was always right. He also made sure that every patient left feeling better, usually with an adjustment and a homeopathic remedy. And then there was Dr. Tom Kurzel. I watched him treat a really stubborn case of croup, and he kept changing the remedy as the cough changed. He told this mother, hey, just call me if the cough changes, and keep prescribing, keep prescribing. And he got this kid through this terrible battle with this cough in a matter of days. I would have given up, and he stayed curious through the entire process, never overwhelmed, and showed me not only is there a remedy for everything, there's a remedy for every stage of the case as well. And then there was Dr. Letitia Dick Cronenberg, who taught me that constitutional hydrotherapy is our birthright as NDs. Other people do herbs, other people do labs, other people do peptides. Who else does constitutional hydrotherapy? No one, guys, it's us. She put an entire space in her clinic and team dedicated to performing them, many, many hydros a day. It was a non-negotiable modality and tool for her, and she built her entire practice around it. And lastly, I was mentored by Dr. Rick Kirshner, who wrote dealing with people you can't stand, how to bring out the best in people at their worst. And he showed me the impact of communication on human health, how to talk to people so they would listen, so they could heal, and also to know why I was showing up in my practice every day. Even the most successful practitioners eventually become lost without purpose. Each of these people had found their spark in this medicine, and it made me curious to see how my practice would develop in Las Vegas. Okay, so I took a risk with this slide, and I'd like to thank Dr. Blake Langley, who somehow outsmarted ChatGTP to make a visual of me collecting elders, how one might collect Pokemon. You've got to catch them all. And I hope these people will still talk to me after this keynote, especially Pikachu Paul Anderson. Please no one send him this photo. Okay, when I stepped back and looked at all these extraordinary physicians together, I realized they were not united by their modalities. They were united by their principles. And they still respected each other tremendously for the way they were called to steward this medicine. They inspired me to attempt to become the fullest expression of myself through the principles of naturopathic medicine. Remember, I had two goals when I sought these people out. First, I wanted to see the medicine beyond the classroom. I wanted to witness what happened when experienced physicians who practiced our philosophy without compromise. I wanted to see patients heal at a depth that I always had hoped was possible. And secondly, I wanted to understand what happens to the physician. How do you faithfully carry this profession for 40 years as underdogs, thanklessly sometimes? And how do you still love what you do? How do you sustainably steward naturopathy? I think that's a really personal answer, but I'm going to try to share with you my journey towards answering it. Any final takers on taking a photo of this slide? I'm advancing it. Every naturopathic practice I've ever had the honor of walking into has shown me different tools applied towards the same principles. They all shared the fundamental concept that the human body has tremendous ability to heal, and it is our job as doctors to remove the obstacles to healing. It's as simple as that. And then their students learned from them, perhaps gathering newer tools or modalities with newer evidence and information, but the application has always been the same. We believe in the body's innate capacity to heal, and it is our job to increase the vitality of the people who come to us for help. This philosophy is unique to our profession. It's the common ground we all stand on. United by something bigger than a standard for care or the tools that we use, united by what the natural world taught our founders, and preserving humanity's access to health-centered care. And somewhere along the way, I realized I wanted that. Not another certificate, not another modality. I wanted the kind of wisdom, peace, and trust that only comes from faithfully implementing these principles over decades. So when graduation finally came, I wasn't asking where I could build the easiest practice. I was asking where could I faithfully carry these principles to my fullest capacity. And before I moved to Las Vegas, I took a very important trip halfway across the world to gain a new perspective on my education and a different perspective on how to build a successful practice. That's George Vitulkas right there. So I finished Bastyr, passed my boards, committed to Nevada, and I wanted to celebrate before opening my practice while immersing myself one more time in the European roots of naturopathy. This was my second trip to Greece, a country I'd fallen in love with for its history, food, and culture. So imagine my surprise when I discovered that the International Academy of Classical Homeopathy was hosting its last, final, week-long course with George Vitulkas on a very remote Greek island called Alanissos. And when I arrived at the academy, I quickly realized I was the only naturopathic doctor, and I was the only American in a room of 300 physicians from around the world, MDs. What surprised me wasn't the lectures, it was the conversations I was having with my peers. Doctor after doctor after doctor sought me out and told me how fortunate I was to be a naturopathic physician. Some of them even point blank asked me, "Did you go to Bastyr?" I'm standing halfway across the world right now, in the middle of nowhere. They were envious that my education had been built around an understanding of the vital force, the V's, and using the least force necessary. Many of them had spent years, decades, trying to unlearn the dogma of conventional medicine so they could understand these ideas, and I didn't have to. Many of them were outcasts in their profession, and I belonged to a bright and vibrant profession. Standing halfway across the world with my diploma basically still in my hands, I realized the very education I had sometimes questioned was being admired by physicians from around the world. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. Completing my week with George, I traveled to Crete thinking I'd learn more about herbal medicine, and instead I learned a lesson that would shape every decision I would make as a young physician and business owner. So after the academy, Dr. Erica Ernell contacted me with an herbalist on Crete named Ildiko, and I spent 3 days with her wildcrafting cistus the traditional way in the mountains. But before I left the island, she told me there was one more person I needed to meet, her mentor, Janina Sorensen. Janina lives on the southern side of Crete on a very remote mountain called Kallikratis and has an apothecary there called Wild Herbs of Crete. So my husband and I have to take a dusty road like 2 hours south to the south end of the island and then switch back up this mountain. And we pop out literally above the clouds. And there's a couple of little farms and little homes and then one maybe commercial looking building. And so I approach this building and there's this tiny stern woman standing in the door blocking it. Who are you? Who sent you? What do you know about wildcrafting? What do you know about herbs? Oh, thank you, Dr. Erica Ernell, for teaching me how to answer all these questions well. So she allowed me in, and I'm looking at her 20 by 20 one-room apothecary, and I'm stunned. A quarter of this room is being taken up by this massive volcanic boulder. Can you see it? It's in the corner of the room. It's taking up a quarter of her room. And the entrepreneur in me is like, why would you put a rock in such a valuable space? Her medicine, her tools, her shelves, everything had been crammed around it. She allowed me to interrupt her entire afternoon of work. She showed me her stills. She was making Vitex essential oil. She was teaching me about wildcrafting sustainably and all the herbs that make up Crete mountain tea. And her clinical pearl with 28 years of practice as a nurse and an herbalist was that all suffering and pathology comes from lack of connection to yourself, your environment, or your community. Sit with people and listen until they tell you how or where they became disconnected. And then use local plants to reconnect them to themselves and their environment. And lastly, Janina told me that it was possible to live your medicine and build a practice around a meaningful life, echoing what I had seen with many of my American mentors. Feeling so full from the encounter and practically bursting at the seams, I finally asked Janina my big question. What is with the rock? It's like 3 feet taller than me and it's like taking up most of your practice. You clearly built your apothecary around it. She looked at me very calmly and said, the rock is a spatial meditation and a reminder that my practice is not the center of my world. I build my practice around something bigger than the medicine so it can sustain me. To her, that was nature, but I heeded her warning. Find something worth building your practice around and stick it non-negotiably and loudly and obnoxiously in the middle of the room. If I built my entire identity around my practice, eventually my practice would be too heavy to carry. And I have felt called to sustainably carry and protect our medicine for the rest of my life. Janina's rock quietly shaped every decision I would make as I built my practice thousands of miles away in Las Vegas, Nevada. Stewardship requires sustainability. Stewardship is not just caring for the medicine, but caring for the people entrusted to protect it. Everything my mentors taught me gave me the confidence to take the medicine somewhere that desperately needed it. And I never thought I would move back to Nevada after leaving when I was 18. But after years of shadowing physicians who practiced fundamental naturopathic medicine, I saw opportunity in a dusty state. Nevada was underserved. At the time, there were only about 10 actively practicing NDs, no state association, no clinic to join, no job offer on the table, no licensure, no scope. Most people saw limitations, and I chose to see possibility. And I knew in my heart that this was the location where I could become the fullest expression of myself through the principles of naturopathic medicine. When I had needed healing in Nevada, I had nowhere to turn. There was no robust presence of naturopathy during my childhood, and this was my opportunity to be the change that I wanted to see in the world. So with nearly $360,000 of student loan debt, I had quietly saved 10 grand from that loan to start my business with. I was not going to take out any more loans. I was going to build what I could with what I had, no matter what that looked like. And I did not have a lot of certainty, but I had a lot of conviction. And my mantra became, proceed, as if success is inevitable. So welcome to the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Welcome to Sin City. Most everything in my hometown is artificial or a literal mirage. The water is reclamated water. Our food is trucked or flown in. The Strip never sleeps. People don't think of Vegas as a healing oasis. They come to celebrate, indulge, escape, party. And it might be the last place people might imagine when they think of vitality. And yet, people still get sick. People still suffer, and my people were still longing for healing. And that's what made it the perfect place to test everything I believed about our philosophy. If vitalism could possibly take root here, it could probably take root anywhere. And I wasn't moving home because it was easy. I was moving home because I believed the medicine belonged there, and my community deserved more access to it. So I came home and started with a second-hand desk in a rented garage, one client at a time. This is where philosophy met reality. I had a calling, a degree, a vision, but I also had a lot of debt, no business experience, no residency, no established clinic, no patient base, no roadmap. There wasn't even a state association to contact. There were only a handful of naturopathic physicians locally, and while they were very kind and welcoming, they made it also very clear they were very busy. The only thing that I had for certain was that I had to build something sustainable, and I had to start small. So I asked a simple question: what do I already have? My parents' home had a converted garage my father used as an engineering office in the 2008 recession. It had its own entrance, and the home was centrally located in the Las Vegas Valley. I asked my mom if I could rent it, and she said yes, for $300 a month. And apparently garages have a reputation for being surprisingly good places to start things. Apple, Amazon, Google, Disney, Metallica, all those came from garages. That little garage became my first clinic. I started it in October of 2019 with the $10,000 I'd saved. And looking back, I wasn't just keeping overhead low, I was protecting my freedom to grow slowly, thoughtfully, sustainably. I didn't need a perfect clinic, I needed a place to begin. And I knew almost nothing about business, so I leaned into every resource I could find through the small business administration, attending free classes, and getting a good CPA to set up my books. I was careful about how I introduced naturopathic medicine in an unlicensed state, wanting to build trust before drawing attention to myself. And then something unexpected happened. I was asked by the Holistic Nurse Association of Southern Nevada to come give a talk in the largest hospital in Las Vegas. And soon after, I hosted my own community breakfast to introduce people to naturopathic case reviews. And for the first time, I felt like my community was beginning to find me. I began seeing clients, maybe only a few a week, but I was really humbled. They trusted me enough to take a chance on my education and on the garage. They say that deserts have always been places where people go to be tested and where they discover who they really are. And little did I know, I was about to go into my own metaphorical vision quest 6 months later. So the first major test of my calling, just as my practice began to gain traction, the world shut down. In March of 2020, I was told by local authorities to close my doors. I wasn't recognized as a physician in Nevada. Oops, better? Thank you. My practice was not considered essential. I was seeing people out of my family's home, and I couldn't justify exposing them to unnecessary risk. So the financial reality of all that was quite devastating. I did not qualify for any of the major relief programs that were available to many US businesses. Payroll protection, EIDL, were out of reach. Pandemic unemployment assistance and employee retention credits were also off the table. My business was too new to demonstrate losses to qualify for these programs. I had just started taking payroll that same month. I remember sitting there thinking, how can this be happening? I literally just got here. And with all this momentum behind me, I had flown straight into a storm. Those were some of the darkest moments of my career. I had just started out and I was questioning everything. Why did I take a risk on this? Why did I take out this loan? Why did I join this profession? Why do I have the debt I had? Why did I leave such a strong community in Washington? And I was very envious of my classmates who had entered residencies or joined established practices. They had support systems, guarantees. They had someone looking out for them that could take advantage of these government programs. And I had bypassed all that in the name of freedom and vitalism, and I suddenly had no hope. I had incredible mentors. I called them often. They gave me a lot of sympathy and a lot of their time, but none of them had navigated this before, and none of them could lead me out. I know that I am not alone in a season like this as a naturopath. I know we can all share experiences that have almost made us give up on everything. But thanks to Dr. Rick Kirshner, I understood my purpose to carry forward. I was bringing naturopathy to Southern Nevada, no matter what. And I wanted to be incredibly successful on my own terms, and a blank canvas gave me permission to do all of that as creatively as I needed to. So I allowed myself to sit around feeling incredibly sorry for myself for about 2 to 3 weeks, and I eventually realized I had a choice. I can spend my energy asking, why is this happening to me? Or I could still ask what was possible. I decided to examine my practice through a naturopathic lens. If a client came to me with the same problem, I would ask for them to adapt. So although my desire as an ND was non-negotiably to have a brick and mortar practice in person with hydrotherapy and in-office homeopathic prescribing, I had to pivot to a virtual offering. Gross. I creatively came up with the immune assessments as of April of 2020 when people were terrified and could benefit from simply understanding how their immune systems worked. So I offered 30-minute virtual consults, sliding scale donation basis, teaching people how to support their immune system using food, lifestyle, and supplements they probably already had at home. And it certainly wasn't the practice I imagined building, but it was the practice that people needed. And it introduced me to an entirely new community. The referrals were spreading like wildfire, and I promoted the assessments through my personal social media. I got to reconnect with old friends and even their network. This was a unique offering, and many of these people later became long-term patients. We would spend 30 minutes together and they'd go, oh, you're easy to talk to. Do you also treat diabetes? I'd teach them something new about their body. Oh, that was informative. Do you also do hypertension? Yes, I do. Please be my patient, please. I got a boost of new clientele. The second pivot came from Dr. Paul Anderson, who sternly encouraged me to find a part-time job. What made me so special that I didn't also need a part-time job? He had a part-time job when he started out too. Not because I failed, but because I needed the momentum. The work had nothing to do with naturopathic medicine, but it gave structure to my weeks. It helped pay clinic overhead, and it helped keep me from sitting at home, believing my career was over before it had ever began. Neither decision was glamorous, but they kept me moving, and adaptability then became an act of stewardship for both myself and my practice. COVID forced me to slow down, and in doing so, it gave me something valuable, a lot of time to think intentionally about the kind of practice and life I wanted to build. What was my rock? What fueled my capacity to create a healing environment for others? The pandemic also reinforced something I fully didn't appreciate when I started. Keeping my overhead low wasn't just a financial decision, it was a freedom decision. Every dollar I didn't owe someone else gave me more flexibility to build intentionally and invest in a space that nourished me. And because I was practicing in Nevada, there was no established model for care. Nobody knew what a naturopathic clinic was supposed to look like. There were no rules telling me how to practice, and it became one of my greatest advantages. So I outgrew the garage by April of 2021, and I moved into this adorable little executive suite on the bottom. It was $600 a month, including utilities and internet, and it was a good move. Moving into a professional space gave credibility to my work, and I was ready for it. And within a year, I outgrew that space, and I was hiring a nutritionist who could do admin, and I really wanted a hydrotherapy suite. So in May of 2022, I moved into the 5-room clinic I still have now. You can see me in my waiting room hosting an event with Dr. Holly Castle. Every step of the way, I kept returning to Janina's words. It is possible to live your medicine and build a practice around a meaningful life. And I was having constant check-ins with myself as a doctor, a business owner, and as a human. How do I want my days to feel? How much time do I need with clients? What kind of clinic would energize me instead of exhaust me? How am I building self-nourishment into my days? And instead of building bigger quickly, I reinvested time, money, and energy into refining constantly. Every decision became an experiment. Not how do I grow faster, but how do I make this more sustainable? I wasn't just building a business, I was designing a life worth living. Your practice can be an expression of your philosophy. So the question is not, what does a successful naturopathic clinic look like? The question is, what does my philosophy look like when it becomes a clinic? I was letting my clinic be built around the life that I was hoping to live. Now, very quickly, because I've repeatedly been asked to give business talks to students, hopefully there's some students in the room, or recent grads, any of you? You are so needed and welcomed, and we love you. You are joining something spectacular, and we're really, really, really happy you're all here. So, With no background in business or finance, this book, Profit First, helped me become profitable in the first 6 months of my practice, and it's helped me maintain profitability every single year. If you're a business owner or if you need help with finances, I've read this book 4 times. Please give it an audio listen during traffic. I also want to acknowledge the crippling student debt many of us have with 6 to 7% compounding interest. And I could not sleep at night until I had a good plan for both my loan and for my retirement. I use Student Loan Planner. Pick any student loan expert you want, but I highly advise you to speak with someone about how to build your loan around your life and not your life around your loan. Capiche? If you want a therapeutic order poster, you can find one at the Naturopathic Medicine Academy. And lastly, I bring my 2 Pomeranians to work every day. This has nothing to do with anything, but that's Chancho, the black one, and Ponchi, the red one. They are instrumental in the healing environment at the clinic, and honestly, they do help with client satisfaction and retention. But you can actually see Chancho at the foot of the bed right there, while my husband's getting a hydro. By 2022, I could stop asking myself, will this practice survive? And I started asking instead, what do I want this practice to stand for? My clinic was becoming an expression of the philosophy that I inherited, and I saw basic naturopathic medicine changing people's lives. Word spread, and without paying for any advertising, my practice became full. And when I stopped onboarding new clients, I reevaluated my offering. The outcomes were speaking for themselves, so I decided to build a structured package around what I saw working. A customized anti-inflammatory diet backed by a dietitian, custom botanical formulas, homeopathy, and a series of 6 constitutional hydrotherapy treatments. Not because these modalities were trendy, but because they reflected the philosophy and the principles that I believed in. Coming to a place where I could tell anybody who wanted to work with me that they would be forced to get 6 constitutional hydrotherapies was a huge turning point for me. It gave them what I believe to be a vagal nerve reset with a boost in theta brainwave, the gateway to the subconscious. Improvement in digestion, heart rate variability, and lymphatic flow. We only heal when we're in parasympathetic. A lot of people have forgotten what it feels like to be in parasympathetic. And my practice filled up again. And I reevaluated my packages. And I decided 6 hydros wasn't enough. I'm going to make these people do 10. And so now my new clients commit to 10 constitutional hydrotherapies in their first 2 to 4 months of working with me, and many of them sign up for 10 more. And then Dr. Holly Castle joined my practice remotely, bringing with her decades of experience with biotherapeutic drainage and homeopathy. And practice got a lot less lonely with another ND sharing the load and doing case reviews. She has brought wisdom and foresight into my practice, preparing for the UNDA shortage long before anyone else saw it. Over time, colleagues and mentors began hearing about what she and I were doing in Nevada. They were shocked to hear that hundreds of people in Las Vegas were committing to constitutional hydrotherapy and embracing foundational medicine. And as much as it helps them, of course, it helps keep my business alive. We did 570 constitutional hydrotherapies last year, and we're on track to repeat that again this year. Speak to me this weekend if you want to know the revenue from that. Over time, I've taken pieces of every mentor who has shaped me, and I built the practice that was possible in the place that I felt called to serve. I hope you are all doing the same. Today, every part of my clinic reflects the naturopathic principles that I resonate most with. The walls of my clinic are covered in floor-to-ceiling murals of Nevada landscapes, so people feel connected to the local nature as we begin treatment. I wildcraft local Mojave plants, and these poor people, I make them take Mojave plants. They're so disgusting, but they work really, really well, okay? So those go into custom formulations whenever possible. I intentionally limit myself to 5 client visits a day because I want every person sitting across from me to receive my full attention in a capacity that also sustains my life and my passions, like dance. I haven't designed a business, but instead a way of practicing that I can still love decades from now. And my clientele don't just receive the philosophy, they walk into it. So many people all over the world have shown me that it's possible to build a life that lets you faithfully carry this medicine for decades. And as my practice grew, I noticed something. The clinic will always ask for more. There will always be another client, another email, another opportunity, another podcast, another chart message, another tincture. If I wasn't intentional, my practice could quickly become the center of my world. And I'm constantly reevaluating what restores me enough to keep showing up fully for the people I serve. What is the rock at the center of my practice? And I found that I really value the idea of freedom. And where I find that freedom is in nature, connecting to source, time with family, travel, art, learning, ballet, electronic dance music, and a pilgrimage to the island of Crete every 1 to 2 years. But more importantly, over time, I built small rhythms into my daily life that keep me strong and vital. Being healthy physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally is my taproot to continuing to hold space for others. I have to protect and prioritize this for the sustainability of what I built. And what this looks like for me in an unlicensed state where I am not on call, I don't bring my laptop home. My work email is not on my phone. My life has my full attention outside of work. I hike in the desert, I spend time wildcrafting, I keep active through ballet and now weight training. Lunch is always a walk in the park with my dogs and usually my husband. And my staff gives me a weekly constitutional hydrotherapy on Wednesday at 4 p.m. every week. None of these decisions happened overnight, but they're a result of continually returning to Janina's challenge. I'm still thinking about it constantly. How do I fit my practice around the life I want to live? And know that I believe wholeheartedly that protecting the physician is part of protecting our medicine. The practice will always ask for more. Stewardship is deciding what it doesn't get to take. And looking back, few of these decisions were really about business. They were about becoming the type of physician who could carry this medicine faithfully for a lifetime. So return to the mentors, the elders, the people who inspired or taught you. How did they do this for decades? And I don't think they all had it figured out in the beginning. They had their own uncertainties and their own challenges within the profession, but over time, their practices became an expression of their lives and our philosophy. And they didn't wake up one day and just decide to become the medicine. They simply lived the philosophy long enough that it became woven into who they were. It wasn't forced, it was earned through practice. And I realized that's what I've been trying to do since graduation. Not perfectly, but intentionally. And every story and decision I've shared has been an attempt to practice the philosophy, not just in my clinic, but in my own life. There is a form of stewardship where both you and the profession can win. And I believe that this is the kind of profession we want to build. So the question becomes, how do we faithfully carry this treasure into the future? When I look back at this journey from childhood to UCLA to Bastyr to becoming a naturopath in Nevada, I realize the power of everyone that came before me. Someone faithfully stewarded this medicine long enough for me to discover it as a patient. Someone protected these principles and wrote them down. Someone stayed in practice for 45 years to inspire us all. Someone mentored and taught students, even in an attic. Someone fought legislative battles and lost. Someone fought legislative battles and won. Someone built Bastyr and all of the other schools. Someone passed the torch. And when I look around this room today, I realize we are all part of that same great story. And the challenges that face our profession today are not unique. Every generation of NDs has faced uncertainty. Every generation of NDs has had to adapt. Every generation of NDs has wondered, what will the future look like? And every generation of NDs has decided this treasure is worth carrying forward. And because of that, we're still here, you're still here, I'm still here. And to me, that says something remarkable about this profession. There is something profoundly resilient about a medicine rooted in the laws of nature and in healing. And now it's our turn, not because we're obligated, but because we've inherited something extraordinary. And sometimes I think we should treat our profession with the same care and tenderness that we treat our patients. Instead of focusing on challenges or problems with naturopathic medicine, perhaps we should be asking, what is this symptom telling me about the profession? What is trying to heal? And is it possible this can lead us to a better or more vital way? When I first sat in Janina's apothecary, I thought the rock was taking up valuable space. And now I realize the rock was protecting everything around it and giving her deeper purpose and nourishment. For the past 7 years, every decision I've made has been my attempt to answer her question. Starting in a garage, keeping overhead low, pivoting in a pandemic, building hydrotherapy into my practice, walking in nature every day, building my practice around a life that I love living and not asking my life to revolve around my practice. I'm still evolving my process and recognizing the things that nourish and inspire me might change in different phases and stages of my life. I am a human. But whenever I get lost, I don't go looking for another strategy. I keep coming back to our philosophy and my purpose. They have never stopped pointing me home. So my hope is not that you leave today with my answers, it's that you leave with your own question. How will I faithfully steward this treasure without losing myself in the process? If I knew before I started at Bastyr everything that was waiting for me on the other side, the debt, the uncertainty, the garage, the pandemic, the crippling loneliness, the risk, the privilege of serving my community, the friendships, the mentors, the joy, the healing, I would do it all over again. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. And somewhere along the way, I realized I didn't just inherit a profession, I inherited a treasure and a way of living. And my blessing to you all in closing, may you each faithfully steward this treasure, and may you build a life that is beautiful enough to carry it forward.